Hello everybody, it's Kara from Wild Book Garden, and today I'm here with part 1 of my January wrap-up. Before I get into that though, I have to show you guys the sweatshirt I'm wearing. It is Judith Slaying Holofernes by Artemisia Gentileschi. Shout out to my friend Julia for letting me know about the existence of this sweatshirt. So I got a couple things that you'll be seeing. But yeah, Artemisia Gentileschi is obviously one of my favorite painters, so I had to jump on that. But I'm going to get into the books. As always, content warnings will be listed in the description box, as well as people, videos, etc. that I mention, and some kind of an overview of some things happening in the world right now. So the first book I finished in 2021 was Spellsweeper by Lee Edward Fody. I talked about this as part of a reading vlog that I will link below that had a very silly theme that you'll probably pick up on as I talk about these books. This is a fantasy book and we're following our main character Kara, short for Carradine, although she goes by Kara for like the majority of the book. And she is what is called a Spellsweeper. This is like a contemporary fantasy where she goes to a magical school but like regular humans don't know about it. And Spellsweepers are like, they're known as MOPs. They're like magical occurrence purgers, I think is what it stands for. And basically their job is, they're kind of like a magical cleaning crew. When spells are done, it leaves behind this residue that if you don't clean it up properly and quickly, it goes feral and it can do a lot of damage. It can attract monsters. It's like bad news. And unfortunately, like with many cleaning staff in our real world, they are kind of looked down on by other wizarding people. Kara really doesn't like that she's stuck in this program. She's not allowed to really use her magic to her full potential. She feels like she wants to be doing like the fun magic stuff because she does have some magic ability. Just she doesn't have very much and she's not really allowed to explore that. And she wants to have a more exciting job. And she has a nemesis whose name is Harley Wu, I think. Yes. Although the book says she would be her nemesis if she even knew Kara existed. Because Harley Wu is like the golden child of this magical school. Everyone thinks she's like perfect and the chosen one and she's so amazingly talented. But Kara starts noticing that the magical residue that happens around Harley is different and it seems more dangerous and it doesn't seem like what normally happens. And she's trying to tell people about it, but of course nobody wants to believe her because everybody loves Harley. And I did like this one. I liked Kara as a character well enough. I actually really liked Harley's character development. I thought like the whole way that storyline went was really, really interesting and I really liked it. I like kind of the overall premise of this book and how logical it felt. Sad to say, but I think that if there was magic in the world, the people who had to clean it up would probably not be thought very highly of, unfortunately. And I just think the way that this book kind of dealt with that was really interesting. I was kind of a little let down by this one, and maybe part of it is that I had really high expectations because this sounded amazing. You guys know I love like ordinary main characters who end up, you know, saving the world because they're just people who care. And that is kind of what happens, but not really. And I was just kind of let down by some of the other like choices. Like the second half of this book, I wasn't a big fan of where it went in terms of the plot and character development, character choices. I think there are ways that it could have been more interesting to me personally, but also just more complex. And then another thing I didn't love is like some of the self-aware fantasy humor I really enjoyed, but there were also places that it felt kind of over the top or cheesy to me. But that's going to vary person to person. So I did like this. I wouldn't steer people away from it, but it wasn't quite what I was hoping. And I gave Spellsweeper 3.5 stars. Next, I finished a reread, and that was The Diabolic by S.J. Kincaid. This is the first book in a science fiction trilogy. And this was a buddy read. Me and Vendi from Caught Between Pages are doing kind of a casual buddy read of the whole trilogy. And this is a reread for both of us. We haven't read the other two books. And I really, really liked this. Like, this was even better than I remember it being. So as I said, this is a science fiction story, and we're following our main character Nemesis, who is a Diabolic. And basically these are, I can't remember if they're like androids or like genetically engineered humans, like what they're closer to, but basically they are not considered humans. They're kind of they're constructed or like manufactured in a way in order to bond to one specific person, and they're like very extreme bodyguards essentially. Like she's bonded to this girl Sidonia. Only wealthy families can really afford to have Diabolics, and she has been bonded with Sidonia, so they're very, very close. And she's like, Sidonia is kind of like Nemesis's reason for living, and also one of the only person she cares about, because Nemesis thinks that she's incapable of caring about people unless she is bonded to them, which is like what's generally believed of Diabolics. And at the beginning of the book, she ends up taking Sidonia's place in this really dangerous like political, what would you call it? Almost like summit, I guess, like summit meeting. And so she takes Sidonia's place and like is believed to be her, and it's about Nemesis navigating all of these like complicated alliances and relationships. There's also like, it's very clear that the Empire is like failing, this galactic like empire, and that people are starting to rebel against it. She ends up finding an unexpected ally in the person of Tyrus, who is the kind of heir to the Empire. And yeah, like I just really, really enjoyed this. I really loved Nemesis as a main character, and I really loved her character development, and like seeing her fight so hard against believing that she can care about people and that people can care about her, because she's grown up, she's had like a really, really hard upbringing in life, and she's been raised to think that she has no feelings and that she is like, people can't love her because she's a thing, not a person. And to see her have those ideas challenged and to start to realize that those things aren't true was just really, really satisfying. I thought her and Sidonia's relationship was really interesting. I also really liked her and Tyrus's relationship. I can't believe that I forgot that this has like a fake engagement plot point for part of the book, so I love that. That was a great time. And I also really liked the setting and like the genre, like the use of the genre, I guess. I've said before that I don't read a lot of science fiction, and the sci-fi that I like, most of it falls in the category of like space, but it's not the point. I know not all science fiction takes place in space, but if it is the kind that does, I like it to not be focused on that. Like really the stuff that I really liked about this book, and this might be, if you really love science fiction, maybe you would hate this, but I really liked that the fact that they were in spaceships wasn't super important. Like, I mean, you do meet people from other planets, you talk about the way that planets relate to each other, and obviously they are in space, and that does come up, it is important, but the book does not assume that you love space and want to hear about it all the time, which is great, because I don't. Yeah, and I just got like very emotionally invested in these characters. I am excited to continue the series, even though I've heard book 2 is really bad. I've heard that book 3 is pretty solid, so I'm excited to like finally finish out this trilogy. And I gave the Diabolic 4 stars again. Oh, also, which you probably gathered, I really, really loved the themes and the exploration of ideas here. The like humanity of non-human characters is something I really love, and it's something I like seeing explored, and I really like books that do that, and this was a great example of that. Next, I finished Call Us What We Carry by Amanda Gorman. This is her, I think, first complete poetry collection. I really love this cover, by the way. Amanda Gorman is a youth poet laureate of the United States. I have talked about her many times, and I was really excited to get like more of her work now, and I did really enjoy this. This collection is really, really grounded in the pandemic, and also the history and present of racism in the United States. It does deal with, again, content warnings will be in the description box, but it deals a lot with like police brutality, especially within the last few years, and I really, really like enjoyed this. I think like Amanda Gorman is just such a talented writer, like linguistically. Like I love and admire the way that she uses words so much, like the way that she like plays with them, the way she can use like repetition and like homophones in words, like so words that sound the same but have different meanings, or that she can like, I don't know, like just the things that she does with language I really enjoy and I'm really impressed with. A lot of these poems also tie what is happening now to the 1918 flu pandemic. I think that was just, I think she did a really great job with those. I also really liked the way that she used like primary source documents, and then she would use those as, I forget what the name of the poems are. She explains it in a note. Is it blackout poetry maybe? I don't remember, where like you take a primary source and then you take out certain words and what you have left is a poem. I think she did a great job with that. I love the way she used primary sources and documents. One of the most powerful, like affecting poems, one of the other pieces that really left an impression on me is one where she does a timeline basically, and it's hard to describe, but I thought it was brilliantly done. As with every poetry collection, some of them worked for me better than others, but I did personally really enjoy this. And I gave Call Us What We Carry 4.5 stars. Next, I finally read a very beloved book, and that is The War That Saved My Life by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley. This is the first in a duology, and it is a World War II historical fiction story, and we are following our main character Ada, who was born with a club foot, and her mother is horribly abusive towards her. And at the very beginning of the book, I was relieved that this happened so early. Ada finds out that children are being evacuated. This obviously is set during World War II, and it is set before the Blitz, before the bombing of London, and they're trying to get kids out into the countryside so that if they are attacked or when they are attacked, the kids will be safer than if they stayed in London. So Ada finds out that the kids in her town, or where she lives, are being evacuated, and her mother wasn't going to let her go, but she ends up sneaking away with her younger brother Jamie. Ada has been like teaching herself to walk because her mother like basically made her crawl everywhere, and she wouldn't even let Ada outdoors. Her mother is like despicable, can you tell? So Ada sneaks away with her younger brother, and they end up getting taken in by this woman named Susan, who was not intending to like foster any children, but that ends up happening. And the book is really about Ada like finally having people who love her, like a guardian who actually loves her. And it's about Susan and Ada and Jamie all getting to know and understand each other better. It's about trauma and healing. This book obviously deals a lot with ableism and abuse, like child abuse. And I really, really enjoyed this. Like, this was really well done. I think like this is really great that I read these, because as I mentioned recently that some of the really hyped middle grade books I've read haven't quite lived up to my expectations. But this book and the sequel really, really did. Like, I thought this was fantastic. I loved Ada as a main character. She is just like, the way she loves people is so like stubborn and fierce, and I love her, and I just like wanted good things for her, and I was so happy when she found people that treated her the way she deserved. And this book also shows that it's not easy. Like, it's not like, oh, Ada has a good home now, so she's fine. Like, because she is traumatized by what she went through. And I also really, really loved Susan. Like, Susan is one of my favorite characters in these two books. Susan is, I think, one of the best parent characters I have ever read in anything. I adore that woman. Like, just, I love her so much, and like the way, like, she's so funny and like loving and smart, and I so admire the way that she really meets Ada where she is. Like, she doesn't get upset at her. She doesn't blame her for reacting the way she does. Like, sometimes Ada will do something where Susan is frustrated and she has to like explain, but she always makes it so clear that she loves Ada and that she's never going to hurt her. And like, it was just wonderful to see. Like, oh my gosh, like their relationship was amazing. I loved it. Can you tell? So as you can tell, I really liked the characters in this book. I really liked the character development and like how slow and believable the growth is. Because like I said, it's not like Ada, she finds a good home and she's fine now. Like, it takes a while, and there are setbacks, and like she's constantly coming up against things that she doesn't understand, and like she's getting frustrated. Like, she didn't know what grass was because her mother never let her outside. And it is just like so confused and scared, and she doesn't know what she doesn't know, and that is communicated so well in this book. And like I said, Susan is also just really understanding and loving, and when she doesn't understand why Ada does something, she doesn't jump to like blaming her for it. Like, I just loved them so much. And I also really liked the themes about you know, like healing and like family and found family and all of that. Like, I really loved this. I did give this book 4.5 stars. I think the ending was kind of abrupt, but I did still really enjoy it. I absolutely see why so many people love this book. Next, I finished A Face Like Glass by Frances Harding. This was another reread, and this was of course part of mine and Hannah's Frances Harding read-along. Live show linked below. This is another favorite for both of us, so it was essentially just another like gush session, and we warned people that that's what was going to happen. But this is one of my other favorite Frances Harding books, and we are following our main character Neverfell, and she lives in this underground city called Caverna. And in Caverna, babies are born not able to make expressions. Like, they're born with blank faces, and that's how they would grow up if they weren't taught how to make certain faces by these people called face smiths. So everybody's like expressions are like manufactured. Like, they don't use them naturally. And Neverfell is a girl who, her face is different. And Caverna is like this really fascinating, dark, whimsical place where there are like these craftsmen that make these like magical like perfumes that can make you trust somebody as they murder you, or like foods that are like so like high quality that they are dangerous, and like things like that. I'm actually just going to read the end of the back of the book because I think it does a better job of describing it than I do. Into this dark and distrustful world tumbles Neverfell, a girl with no memory and a face so incredible to those around her that she must wear a mask at all times. For Neverfell has a face that shows her emotions, a face incapable of lying, a face that is a dangerous threat and an irresistible treasure, a face that some would kill for. Yeah, and so the book is about what happens when people find out about Neverfell, and she gets like whisked away to this really dangerous political like court, and there's like all these alliances, and there are like factions that she doesn't understand, and yeah, like all of Frances Hardinge's books, it's actually difficult to explain what the book is really about, but I love it. I have heard it summed up as just like a very, very, very loose Alice in Wonderland retelling. Like, if you know that story, it's going to be really fun to see the little Easter eggs, like really subtle things. But if you don't know that story, you don't like it, like, it's fine. It doesn't really affect the story that much. And I have heard this book summarized as, what if Alice grew up in Wonderland and then had to find her way out? And I see why people say that. I think it communicates something about the vibe or the atmosphere, but that doesn't really communicate like the story or what the reading experience is like. So I guess you just have to trust me and read this because I loved it so much. Neverfell is a character who every time I reread this book, I love her more quickly because she is like very naive at the beginning of the book, and I can see why that would frustrate people. I think it frustrated me the first time I read this book, but it's really believable why she is so naive. Like, she has grown up completely isolated, and then when she finally gets out into the wider world of Caverna, she's really just thrown into things, and it's a very dangerous place to be anyway, and so especially for somebody who doesn't really know what's going on. I just love Neverfell and the way that she like loves and trusts people so much, and I love how we see her grow throughout the book, and she doesn't lose who she is, but she becomes better informed about the world around her, and she wants to do something about it. Like, she wants to make things better. And I really loved some of the supporting characters as well. Like, Erstwhile is one of my favorites. I wish he had even more scenes, but I really loved him. And then the characters that you don't like are written so well in this book. Like, yeah, I just like the characterization of them was also good. There's a side character who really stands out to me as being like one of the best examples of that character type, or that like the way that character tends to be used in a story. And I really loved that. I loved the writing as always. I loved this like setting and this like dark whimsy. This is a fantasy, so I liked the magic as well, but just the world building in general is incredible. I love the plot and like how twisty it gets, like seeing Neverfell piece together like parts of her past, and then like also figuring out like what is going on right now, like why some things are happening the way they are. I think the ending is fantastic, and one of the things that I just really love about all of Frances Hardinge's books is the themes, and like the ideas and the topics that her books deal with, because this book deals a lot with oppression in general, and like classism and privilege and like revolutions, and like the way that the like lower class people in this book are treated, like the way that is written about, and the way it shows how like we strip people's humanity away from them in various ways in order to feel like we can do whatever we want to them. And like the way that is done in this book is just so smart, and so like chilling and so well done. Like, obviously I loved this book. I gave it Face Like Glass 5 stars. I need to stop talking about it because I could go on about it forever. Next, I finished Witchshadow by Susan Dennard. This is I always do this. I think it's technically book 4, but it's the 5th one I've read because there's a novella in the Witchland series, and I have to show you guys under the dust jacket. If you've read this series, you know. It says, "Me Varushta, trust me as if my soul were yours." And I love that line. I love what it means. I love the characters who say it. Anyway. So speaking of Hannah, this was a buddy read that we did, sort of. I fell very behind, so thank you, Hannah, for being so patient with me, because it took me a lot longer to finish this than I thought. Not because I wasn't enjoying it. Yeah, so where do I even begin with the Witchland series? It is a very political fantasy series. In this world, people have different magical abilities, and the first book starts with one of our main characters, Safi. She's a truth witch, so it's like she can tell when people are lying or telling the truth, which is obviously a very valuable skill to have, and it's very dangerous for people to know you have this skill, because of course everybody wants access to this ability, or they want to keep other people from having this ability. And that, like, the first book starts with her and Iseult, her thread sister, which is basically like a really intense like best friend like to the point of being sisters, that I just love. So they're trying to keep Safi away from people who want to use this ability, but then they also get caught up in prophecies and then other characters. Like, I have no idea how to summarize this book series, so I apologize for that. There are other people who have done a better job of it. So I'm just going to talk about this book, and I can't really summarize it because it is like the 4th or 5th book in a series. But I think this is my second favorite. I really loved this. This is, this book, each book kind of focuses on a different main character. Like, you do get lots of different points of view, but there's kind of a character who's the main focus, and this one is Isolt's book, and Isolt is one of my favorite characters. Like, she might be my absolute favorite character in this series, actually. I love her so much, and I love her character arc. Like, her growth and her realizing that, like, emotions are not a weakness, and like all of that, it's just like Isolt's character development in this book almost had me weeping. Like, I love her so much. She has come so far. I do think that some of the revelations or like changes of heart happened maybe a little more quickly than they should have. Maybe like I just would have liked more explanation or like development or like a lead up to that. But I don't care. Like, I still really enjoyed it. I love these characters so much. I feel like things are really like coming together in terms of all of these different plot threads and all of these different characters and how their stories are converging, and like there's like this, not really like a past timeline, but like things that happened like centuries ago that are connected to things that are happening now, and I feel like we're finally starting to see that stuff come together. This was like a really, really satisfying book. The last chunk of this book was fantastic. I loved it. There were other parts of this book that were incredibly stressful and upsetting to read about. There's one character who I am still holding out hope for. I don't know if it's justified, but I just want to believe that things will turn out okay with them. But who knows? I love these like character relationships as well. Like all the kinds of relationships in these books are done so well. Like friendships and like family and like romantic relationships and just like everything. I really like the majority of the points of view we got here, which is very exciting. The problem though is that as these books go on, I find more and more characters that I'm very deeply attached to, which is not really good, because the more characters you feel that way about, the greater the chance that something terrible will happen to one of your favorites. So it's a mixed blessing. But yeah, I am really enjoying these books. I can't wait for the last book whenever that comes out. This was not even really a review. This was just me walking you through my emotions, so sorry about that. But I gave this book 4.5 stars. It was fantastic. Next, I finished The War I Finally Won by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley. This is, of course, the sequel and the concluding book to this duology. I don't actually have it with me because I have lent it out to somebody. But yeah, so this book, it picks up pretty soon after the first book. And we are still following Ada. We are still, it deals with a lot of the same themes, but I think this book focuses even more specifically on the war itself. So this book deals a lot with grief and healing and sacrifice. I really, really love some of the new characters we meet, like this girl Ruth, who comes to stay with them, and she's a Jewish German refugee, and the way that Ada doesn't really understand what that means at the beginning, and like seeing her realize like what's going on. I also really loved our returning characters. I continue to love Ada as a protagonist. She's just like so prickly and fierce and strong, and just I love her. I love the way that this book also focuses on language and the power of knowing what to call something, and like how important that is. There's one character from the first book who ends up spending a lot more time with our characters in this one, and I feel like the way that their character was developed was really impressive as well. There's like a section near the end especially where they spend a lot more time with Ada, and like just those interactions I think really helped sell me on this character. Like it just really like made me think like, okay, you're a good one, you know what I mean? I also really appreciate about this book, which the first book did as well, how much it shows that healing and like emotions are messy, and they're not easy, and sometimes you're angry and you can recognize you're angry about something that is not this person's fault, but you're furious anyway, and the way that these books like really talked about that. I'm trying not to give away too much about like where this book starts, because that does spoil some things from the first book, so I'm sorry if I'm being a little vague, but I really, really loved this book. Like this, yeah, I gave this one 5 stars. I think I was definitely very emotionally invested and affected by this book. There were things that I should have seen coming, but I did not. And the way they were written about was just so moving and so well done. one of the things that this book talked about that really got to me is like, it talks about how sometimes you lose somebody and you almost feel guilty for how much grief you feel for them because you know other people have more of a right to that, you know, like they have like closer relatives or friends or something, and you kind of feel like, well, like how can I be so upset when I know other people lost somebody who was even a bigger presence in their lives. And this book shows how like that's not how grief works. Yeah, this book just did a lot of things really, really well. Again, very emotional. I knew this was going to be an emotional book. Like I went into it thinking like it would be like maybe like a 3 Kleenex book, and it was like 15. Like I cried so much, but it was incredibly done. So yeah, 5 stars. Next, I finished The Quiet Gentleman by Georgette Heyer. This is the first Georgette Heyer book I've read in quite a while, and I was glad to get back to her writing. I've said before that she's an author where even if I don't love the book, I enjoy the experience of reading them. Like she's kind of a cozy author for me. And this one, we follow our main character Gervais, who he comes back from the war. He's set to inherit his like family's like estate, and his stepmother, I think she'd be his stepmother and his half brother are not thrilled that he came back. They were hoping he would die in the war so that his stepbrother could inherit, and that did not happen. So he knows that they're not happy that he's back. And then there start being all of these like strange accidents that are happening around him, but maybe they're not actually accidents, so he's trying to figure out what's going on, if somebody is actually trying to hurt him or get him out of the way. And then our other main character is this woman named Drusilla, who she's spending a lot of, like, she's kind of like a companion for his stepmother, so she's around a lot, and I loved her. And I had like such a great time with this book. I know this is not considered one of Georgette Heyer's best, but I loved it. I had a great time. This has just like further confirmed my theory that my enjoyment of a Georgette Heyer novel is inversely proportional to how much of a rake the hero is, because I hate the rake trope or character archetype. I'm not even the biggest fan of reformed rakes because the way they're done I don't tend to like. And Gervais is not perfect. Like he's definitely not always the nicest with people. He can be a little condescending sometimes, but overall he's like, I really liked him, and he's way better than a lot of Georgette Heyer's heroes usually are. Cotillion is still my favorite book of hers. Like Cotillion is top tier, but this is my second favorite. This is the only book of hers I've given 4 stars, because Cotillion I gave 5 stars, and all the others I've read from her have been either 2 or 3 stars. So this was a good time. This is also, in terms of genre, it's a little weird. So Georgette Heyer wrote mysteries, and she also wrote romances, and this is like a little of each. I think this is considered one of her romances. I don't know. A lot of people didn't like the mystery aspect. I actually thought it was really interesting and fun, and it kind of added like a fun plot element to the book. And the romance is definitely a subtle one, but I really enjoyed it. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention is Gervais starts, like he comes back and there's this woman he really likes, and it turns out she was kind of involved with his stepbrother or his half-brother, so that causes some conflict as well. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this. As I said, I liked the writing. I think the humor was great. I really liked the characters. I liked the genre blend, and I just really loved Drusilla so much. Like, she's an amazing character. Like the way she's introduced, let me see if I can find it. So like when Drusilla is like first introduced, we get this like description of her, like how she looks and kind of how she comes off. So we get this whole long description of her, and it says, "She employed no arts to attract. The Earl thought her dull." And I'm like, I already love you, Drusilla. Like, I just really liked her. I also really loved the female friendship in this book. I was a little worried that the one of the other female characters that we spent a lot of time with, that she was going to be like very stereotypical, and she wasn't really. Like in some ways she was, but she also kind of played against type. Like I don't know, I just really liked the female friendship there. As far as things I didn't like, there's a part of this book that feels, basically I didn't like the victim blaming. One character attempts to like forcibly kiss one of the female characters, and she is understandably very upset by this. And a lot of the other characters are like, well, he shouldn't have done it, but that's what you get for flirting. Maybe now you'll know not to raise expectations, which I hated. And Gervais, to his credit, he was the one who was kind of like, that's not okay, what are you doing? Like, what's wrong with you? So points for him. But yeah, the other characters, I didn't really like how they responded to that. And then also, there's some things about the resolution of the mystery. Some of it I really liked. I like saw some things that were coming, but in an enjoyable way. But then there was also some parts of it that, I don't know, I think the implications of some things are not the best, But overall, I enjoyed this. I found it satisfying. Like, again, I know that this is not considered one of her best works, but based on the things that I like in her books, this was a huge hit for me. So I gave The Quiet Gentleman 4 stars. Next, I finished A Study in Scarlet by Arthur Conan Doyle. This was for our Past It Classics live show where we read 2 different Sherlock Holmes stories. I will link that live show down below. And this is like the first Sherlock Holmes story, so we like meet the characters and everything. And this was like a really interesting experience. I liked the writing. I liked the characters. One thing I think is really interesting is, as my friend Kelly from Cozy Reader Kelly, she's read I think all of his stories now, like all of his Sherlock Holmes stories, and I remember her saying that the way Sherlock is portrayed in adaptations as being like basically an emotionless robot is not at all how he actually is in the stories, and I definitely agree. He's definitely focused, but it's not like he doesn't have feelings, and like he makes jokes, he laughs, he does all these things that like movie and TV Sherlock would never do. And I just think that's interesting. I think he's actually a lot more complex in the short stories. I did like Watson. I liked the first half of this mystery. I liked more. The second half is bizarre, and I was feeling kind of like dumb because years ago I tried to read some Sherlock Holmes stories. I got halfway through this one and I thought it was over because I turned the page and we're like suddenly in Utah with like the Mormons, and it made no sense. I was like, I guess that story was over. And after coming back to it, it's like, yeah, it really feels like the story is over. So I don't feel so dumb for thinking it was now. So the second half was very strange. I do think ultimately the mystery did kind of pay off, but we didn't need that much detail. That whole second half could have been way, way shorter. Also, Arthur Conan Doyle definitely had like a personal vendetta against the Mormons. Although Taylor said Taylor's the one who hosted this live show, and she did say that apparently later in Arthur Conan Doyle's life, he actually like apologized to, I think it was like the grandson of Brigham Young maybe, or great-grandson or something. And basically that he admitted that he was working off of material that Mormon people did not actually themselves write. He just kind of was writing based on other people's perceptions of them. So it does sound like he recognized his error later in life. But yeah, this was like an interesting experience. I gave it 3.5 stars, so I had a reasonably good time with it, but that second half was a choice. And then finally, the last book I'm going to talk about today is a picture book, and that is Born on the Water by Nicole Hannah-Jones and Renee Watson, illustrated by Nicholas Smith. And this book is released as part of the 1619 project, and I'm pretty sure Ashley from Bookistrom is the one who first put this book on my radar. And this is a picture book about a young black girl in the United States who, she's in class one day, and they're given an assignment to talk about their family history, like to trace their family back, I forget how many generations. And she can't do that. She can only go a few generations back because she is descended from slaves, who were obviously like forcibly ripped away from their families and from their like knowing their history and like all of this knowledge that that people can take for granted. Like, she doesn't have that, and she's ashamed. And so she goes home and she talks to, I think it's her grandmother, and she explains what's happening like at school and why she's upset. And so her grandmother tells her like, let me tell you where we come from. And she like goes back and she talks about these different like African nations and cultures, and how like rich and like vibrant they were before the slavers came. And she talks about like the like black leaders in the US and what some of the things that they have accomplished, and like just I can't do this book justice by talking about it, so just read it. But it was beautifully told and illustrated. Let me find an example. Like, the illustrations are just gorgeous, like just absolutely stunning illustrations. And as I said, the writing also stood out to me. I think sometimes I need to be better about paying attention to writing in picture books, because I think it's easy for the pictures to kind of steal the show. And these were gorgeous illustrations, but I also think the words were really beautifully put together, and like really like the pictures and the words really enhanced each other. I thought this was amazing. This is probably one of my new favorite picture books, and I gave Born on the Water 5 stars. Okay, everybody, so that was part 1 of my January wrap-up. Please comment down below and let me know if you have read any of these books, what you thought of them, or if you're going to pick them up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!